Welcome to the Catholic Table Talk podcast. This is where everything Catholic is on the table. New episodes Thursdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on most podcast platforms. Here's your host, William Sauber.
Welcome back to episode 218, folks, at Catholic Table Talk podcast. Thank you again for joining us. Please visit our website, catholic-table-talk.com. Also, email us at catholictt@gmail.com. It's the fastest way to get a hold of us. You can also get a hold of us via a website in the contact area as well. So today we're going to talk about pro-life, and again, it's pretty much it's a big movement going on right now. A lot of stuff happening with pro-life, whether you're in the news or not, and I think a lot of people look to the younger generation for the pro-life news, because a lot of young, like I said, Gen Zers are leading the movement, I should say, which a lot of Gen Zers don't really believe in the faith first to begin with. So yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about today with Alexandra, from Alexandra's Alley. You can find it on Spotify and Instagram. So let's welcome her to the table, making her Catholic Table Talk debut. So Alexandra, thank you for your time today and for your ministry. And yeah, it seems like it's full life is heading in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Well, you're very welcome. So let's just kind of start off. I usually do this at the end, but let's start off with a little bit about yourself and your podcast.
Sure. So I've actually been podcasting for about 5 years now. Started back in 2020. I had a show with my best friend, Franny, for several years. But she just got tired of doing the podcast, and I was like, no problem. Kind of was having this urge to branch off and do one myself anyway. So I just rebranded the show. It went from being Only We Care to Alexandra's Alley. And on the show, I talk about all the things that I'm passionate about. So that means, the pro-life movement, politics, Catholicism, fashion, makeup, everything. It's not just like politics and faith. Sometimes it's fun stuff too. It's basically whatever, I feel like talking about, or something that the Lord places on my heart to talk about. I like to just do a variety of topics. I don't like to stick to just one thing, but my podcast, this past October just turned a year old. So I've been doing the show on my own for a year, which is really crazy, to think about. But yeah, it's been a journey and it's been really fun.
Yeah, well, awesome. Congratulations on you. I know that's a big achievement. I mean, I just can't believe I've been going for almost 5 years. I mean, time flies by. Let me tell you what, that is for sure. So, and yeah, so why you talk about a lot of things, which I think is fabulous. Is great. Um, so why are you involved in pro-life? Why do you talk about pro-life on your show? Why do people should kind of get involved in pro-life?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important to be involved in the movement, especially as a Catholic, because these babies can't speak for themselves. And the only people that are going to defend them are people like us, right? People that want to actually speak up for them and fight for them, because they can't speak. They're in the womb and they don't have the ability to say, please don't kill me. We know that it's wrong. I believe it is our duty as Catholics to speak out against the murder of innocent children. Um, I mean, thou shalt not murder. That's one of the 10 commandments. And it is our duty to uphold that through every aspect of society, to follow that commandment. So it's so important, because these babies, like I said, literally cannot speak for themselves. They are vulnerable. And we have lost so many innocent children to this horrific act of violence. So many souls have been lost and never got to see the light of day. And when you really think about that and think about the severity of that, and I think it's over 60 million babies have been lost to abortion. That should make you want to say something. Even just one is too many. that should make you want to say something. And I believe that it is so, so important to defend the defenseless because, like I said, they literally cannot speak for themselves. And it is important for us as Catholics to preach the dignity of life and how precious life is. Yes, we live in a broken world, but life is so valuable. And this earth, although it's broken, is a beautiful place. Um, but the ultimate goal, of course, is to get to heaven. But we just want everybody to know the goodness of God and to be able to spend eternity with him and not to get separated from him forever. So that's really why I believe that it's important to be part of the pro-life movement. There's a lot of misconceptions about the pro-life movement. There's a lot of brainwashing that happens, especially to young women and men, in which they're taught that abortion is some kind of right, that it's some kind of like great, awesome thing, and it's not. So it's really important for other young people, I think, also to hear from young people like you and like me, about the horrors of abortion and about the dignity and value that life has. Because hopefully they'll listen to somebody that looks like them or that is their age, and can relate to them. Um, yeah, I mean, I just think it's so important to change the hearts and the minds of as many people as we possibly can.
Right. And it's changing that, I mean, people think of it as changing as like, in a bad way. It's like, brainwash me. Like, but it's like we're actually showing them the facts about what is actually happening. Like you mentioned 60 million abortions. And basically the past couple of years I've seen the stats on Facebook and on social media of how many deaths there are from abortions to cats. So and abortion just blows out cats, so it get deaths every year, like every year. It's kind of crazy. Um,
Right.
so yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said, definitely men get brainwashed into it as well. They don't. Maybe it's the woman who's doesn't want to have the abortion, but the man kind of makes her have one. And you mentioned something like thou should not more. I kind of just throw this out question in because I actually had so where I work is we actually they were talking about this actually today or yesterday. I can't remember which day it was. But it was on a test. So I work at a county school and it was on a test that the kid was like, thou should not more. And she's like, no, you should say thou should not kill because that's the thing. Thou should not more. And he's like, and she's like, if you're gonna put that down, it's gonna walk in as incorrect. And now I'm just saying this because a lot of people who are for abortion, right, they don't see that as moral, right? Means it's not an
Right.
actual human being. So how do you I guess in your experience in pro life and the pro life movement, how do you like I say change the minds of people that way?
I think there's a lot of effectiveness, and I'm taking this out of a page of Live Action's book. Um, and even I think Students for Life have done it. Kristen Hawkins.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure she's done this too. I think there's a lot of effectiveness in literally showing a video of what happens during an abortion. Now, I'm not saying like to show an actual one, but they show animated, versions of what happens. And I've seen a lot of people, and maybe not a lot, but some, after they see that video, their minds change because they had no idea that that's actually what happens and what goes down. I think there's a lot of effectiveness in visuals, as horrific as they are, whether it's real photos or an animation. It's all horrific. It's all awful. But I think when you're forced to look the horror in the face, that can really be a huge eye opener for some people. I think that's really an effective way to change people's minds. It's really gruesome and unfortunate that that's what it takes. I'm not saying that showing a photo of an aborted baby or showing somebody an animated video of an abortion is pleasant in any way. Of course, it is not. Um, But for some people, that's really what it takes to wake them up. I mean, I've seen live action do it. I've seen a lot of you know, people in the pro-life movement stand outside of clinics, with posters of real babies and what has happened to them. I've seen Students for Life, like I said, Kristen Hawkins, um, show people videos of what happens. And then they go, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I changed my mind. Um, I also think besides, visuals, because they, like I said, can be really gruesome. I mean, they are gruesome. I shouldn't say they can be, they are. Um, I think besides visuals, just trying to really listen to somebody else and really listen to their point of view and try to meet them where they're at. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of times, when we try to do that, people put up a resistance. But if you can just plant that seed, if you can be the pro-life person that was nice to the person that was screaming at you, or if you can be the pro-life person that was nice to the person that was throwing stuff at you, or yelling insults, you might just plant the seed. If you refuse to act the way that they're acting, and if you refuse to not behave in the way that they're behaving towards them, if you change your attitude and you show them, like, no, I actually care about you and I want you to see the truth. And if you can just approach them with kindness and patience, which is easier said than done sometimes,
Like,
I think that's also really effective. And you might not change their heart and their mind in that moment. Might take a year, might take 2 years, might take 10 years. But one day it might stick and they might remember how you treated them in that moment. That's what I would say.
well said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's what I don't think you could put it much better. I mean, unless maybe you could, but yeah, like you said, a lot of people change their minds after they see the gruesome videos, and I've heard a lot of testimony on that as well. So definitely. So I mean, a lot of people know about Old versus Wade. I was over torn, which again, like I mentioned a little before we hit record, it was a lot of people, even Catholics, are for abortion. Maybe I mean, I know quite a few who are for abortion. Um, and whether you're for abortion or you're against abortion, we now know Roe versus Wade was a huge thing. But that was a few years ago, and I feel like a lot of people would saw it on the news and maybe they have torn away from the pro-life movement because they're like, oh, it's going in the right direction. Like I said, with the current president, he's probably the most pro-life president we've ever had as a nation, like him or not. That's just a fact. So, but just kind of fill in, Alexander, if you could, sorry, yeah, if you could, just the latest in the pro-life movement, like what's happening. I mean, I myself have been hearing a lot of Planned Parenthood clinics closing, which is great news. Which
Right.
again, it could be next president that could reopen again if he's or she's for abortion. When the policies get through, but what has been kind of the latest, toppest trending stuff that you might see on social media or in news about pro-life?
Right. So I actually have some things saved on my phone that I wanted to address with you. Hang on one second while I pull that up. Okay. Um, Hang on. Okay, let's see. So, somebody that talks frequently about stuff in the pro-life movement is Isabel Brown. Um, and she's also a Catholic, fun fact. But she posted something back in October. It was pretty much about a month ago to the date. Um, there has been, and I want people to know about this because like this isn't just some like made up concept. Like we've gone into very dangerous waters where we are now taking concepts that were once just like in a book, like in a sci-fi book, in a movie, And now people are actually really trying to do these things. Of course, I don't even like the idea of it. I don't like the idea of this being in a book or being in a movie. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is like things that once just seemed like, oh, it's just like a made up thing that somebody put in a book. It's like, no, people now are actually trying to do this, and we've entered very murky, evil waters, um, so to speak. And she posted something on October 16th, talking about like this new way of making babies. And I'm just going to read the caption. It says, as science continues to progress humanity into new fertility technology, and she put progress in air quotes, new research has emboldened scientists to create dozens of human embryos in petri dishes without ever using women's egg cells at all. Okay, big red flag.
Okay.
We call this human advancement. She put that in quotes as well. But in reality, this is the systemic erasure of women in the name of women's rights. 100%. I mean, we're moving so far away from the value of life and preserving the dignity of life to treating life like it's a science experiment. Something that was once a concept in Brave New World, for example, and I don't recommend that anybody read that. Please don't. It's a gross, stupid book. Had to read it in high school. If I had known what I know now, I would have never read it. But what was once, like I said, like just some made up concept is now coming to fruition. I mean, I even saw Isabel Brown post before, I think it was last year, about, you know, people talking about making babies in pods. This is insanity. And stuff like this happens because people don't even know the value that life has from the moment of conception. We've desensitized so many people into thinking that life is disposable, or that we can just create it in a petri dish, and then if we don't like it, we can get rid of it. And that's how we've arrived at this awful place. So I just want people to be aware of the fact that there are people out there that treat life like it's a science experiment, and it's a real thing. We see it every day in the IVF industry. So I'm extremely disappointed that this is happening, but quite frankly, given everything that's happened, I'm not surprised. So that's just one thing I wanted to, you know, touch on because it happened. She just posted about it a month ago. So it's kind of relevant and recent. And I'm also worried about what's going to happen in New York City and Virginia as well, now that they elected a communist for a mayor in New York City. And they've also elected an extremely pro-abortion governor in Virginia.
Which really surprised me, by the way.
I mean, Virginia, it's Virginia. And then New York, it's New York. I can say that because I'm from New York. So I'm disappointed, but not surprised.
Right.
You know, people just hear the word free and they're like, yeah, I want that. And this is where we're at. I worry what those two are going to do in those states. And Students for Life Action made a post about you know, the governor of Virginia, and it was right after the election. And it says, breaking: after retaining control of the Virginia legislature, Democrats will now try to force the radical abortion and all 9 months amendment into the state constitution, which New York already did in the last election with their stupid Prop 1 bill that they passed, because they claim that it was, if it didn't pass, that it was going to be a violation of women's rights, when in fact it is just an abomination. It's actually just a violation of Life Act is what it is. So Virginia's basically going to do the same thing. They're going to try, And in their caption of this post, they made this post on November 4th for reference. They said, "We have spent months working to support pro-life candidates in Virginia. Unfortunately, while we saw victories in some races, pro-abortion Democrats ultimately retained control of the Virginia legislature. Virginia Democrats have promised to vote again in January 2026 on the radical abortion in all 9 months amendment, with the goal of getting it on the ballot in May. The amendment would legalize abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy and remove nearly every safeguard for women. Plus, it would remove any requirement to care for babies who are born alive during abortions. Our next step will be to mobilize across Virginia and tell voters about the horrors this amendment could create." And then it says, "Learn how you can help save babies" at the link in our bio. So that's, again, the Students for Life Action Instagram that posted this. But I mean, these are very real things that are happening across the nation. And that's why we have to try to prevent as many Democrats from getting in office as possible, because they will make it their mission to overturn all the work that we've achieved. They will do everything they can to make us go backwards. And I'm worried about what Mondami might try to do in New York City. I don't know. I fear for the pro-lifers in that city. I do. I don't know what that's going to look like. I can only imagine that it's going to get pretty ugly with him as a mayor. Because we certainly know that he doesn't stand for life. But yeah, Virginia and New York City, and just New York in general, are definitely states to keep an eye on. Really any blue state. There's a lot of work to be done. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done in every state. Of course, we have to work on, making abortion illegal no matter what. But in blue states especially, keep your eyes on them. Right. But also red states too, because there's no perfect red state. So, there's work to be done everywhere. It never ends.
Right.
It never ends until Jesus comes back. So,
right. That's true.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
Gotcha. And I guess I've had talked about pro-life on the show before too, but I guess because again, a quick question for you is like, what and you mentioned Students for Life, but what other sources do you really depend on for pro-life mean? Because I mean, you watch maybe more fair, honest news like Fox News, like I do, but they only talk a lot about pro-life stuff happening. So to a degree, they mostly talk about what's in Washington.
Right.
So what sources, I guess, would you recommend?
Yeah. Easy. Live Action Org on Instagram. That's Lila Rose's organization. That is probably the best pro-life resource that you could get your hands on. They are so good about explaining things and breaking down, different scenarios and why abortion is wrong in X, Y, and Z scenario. They do a great job of explaining why it's wrong in every case. Lila Rose is also awesome. She's also a fellow Catholic.
Right.
And her show, the Lila Rose podcast, is a great source, to get pro-life news from. Also, Students for Life, great organization. Isabel Brown, she's really great at reporting on things happening in the pro-life movement. Yeah, I mean, those are some of my favorite organizations that I can think of. I think Students for Life and Live Action Org are probably like the top two places I go. I mean, I follow a lot of pro-life people. But I would say in terms of organizations, like those are probably the best. Even like people wise, Abby, here we go, Dr. Abby Johnson, who was a former, abortionist, and is no longer. Kristen Mercer Hawkins, which I mentioned before, she's great. Yeah, there's lots of resources out there, but honestly, like I think Live Action and Students for Life are like my top two. I mainly go to Live Action and Lila Rose. Like I like to stick in that lane, but there's a lot of good resources out there. But I would definitely recommend the Catholic ones to get the full truth and the full lens of the dignity of life.
Definitely. Because I think, I mean, what maybe I'm wrong, but I want to say some other denominations don't really give you the full truth and don't really, they're kind of like on the border with abortion. I could be wrong, but I want to say that one time.
Yeah, some of them do
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
you know, so yeah, definitely good. I mean, even if you're not a Catholic listening to this,
Right.
it's still a good, but those sources are still good for you just because it's fair, it's honest, and you should be able to keep up what's going on in the world. So, like I mentioned with the president, you mentioned with the mayor and governor, with the poor races. I mean, it wasn't really a win for poor life during this last election. And midterms are coming up, and then eventually he's going to be the president again. And just what do you think? What has to be done? Just what do you think is on the horizon? I guess. I know it's not a crystal ball or anything, but just like what what do you want to see happen? I guess with the elections coming up in the future, as well as just what people can do today to maybe secure more of a full life victory as we move forward with the elections coming up.
Right. What I would really like to see is more Republicans and Democrats really have courage to stand up for life. And I want Republicans and Democrats to unite on this. Is that going to happen in my lifetime? I don't know. But that is what I would like to happen. I would like for Republicans and Democrats alike to see the value of life and to see the horrors of abortion. I certainly don't want Republicans to get soft on abortion. I think there's probably some Republicans out there that know abortion is wrong, but they like to campaign that they're not totally against it so that they get votes.
Mm.
I think when it comes to this whole political movement, you can't compromise on the dignity. You can't compromise on the dignity of life.
Right.
Who cares about votes? Stand up for what's right. And I think if we saw more Republicans doing that and doing what's right, and actually, if they all got on the same page and were on a united front, it would inspire more people to be against abortion under all circumstances.
Really? You really think so? I'm just asking because we live in a
hope.
culture of death. So
that's what I hope.
Right.
I mean, that's how it starts, right? It has to start with one person campaigning and saying, you know what? No, abortion is not okay. And then maybe that makes somebody else want to run for office that is also against abortion in all cases. And they run. And then they inspire somebody else to run. We won't know, but it's worth a shot, right? I mean, it's certainly a better option than campaigning for abortion. I think really what I'm getting at is that people need to really open their eyes and grow a spine, quite honestly. And I mean that respectfully, but really to grow a spine. And if you're a politician and you know abortion is wrong, but you're afraid to tell that to your voting base, do it anyway. Do it anyway, because that's the right thing to do. And hopefully, like I said, you inspire somebody else to wanna run, that also thinks the same way as you. And that's really what I hope for, is that abortion eventually just becomes totally unthinkable. But something else that I want to say is that, and I've talked about this before on my page, on my Instagram, but even when the president does something in the pro-life movement that I don't like President Trump is not completely pro-life. He doesn't completely align with, our Catholic beliefs about life, right? But what I always try to tell people is like, no matter who's in office, no matter if abortion is legal in your state, or illegal, you can always convince somebody to not go in that clinic. Just because something is legal in your state doesn't mean you have to do it. And I certainly hope that if it's illegal in your state, you're not trying to find a way around that. Just want to say that.
Right.
But for clarity. But you know, just because something might be legal doesn't mean you have to go through with it.
No.
You can always use your voice to convince somebody to not go in that clinic. You can always volunteer to pray outside of a clinic. You can always volunteer to be a sidewalk counselor. You can always volunteer to go on a college campus or start a pro-life group. And band together with other people that think like you. You can always do something. Just because something is legal, like I said, doesn't mean you have to go through with it. Don't let these people discourage you. Don't let these people brainwash you. You know, the pro-aborts out there, the crazy pro-choicers. There is always work to be done. And I even said this on my page, and this is actually like what I said like about a year ago, when Trump came out and said, you know, like he wanted to do more stuff with IVF. I said, just because IVF is legal or you have easier access to it doesn't mean you have to go through with it. Just because you have an abortion clinic that's open in your state doesn't mean you have to go to it. You can get help somewhere else. True help, true treatment for your fertility issues. You don't have to go down these dark paths, and you can convince other people in your life to not go down those dark paths. So no matter what happens, no matter who's in office, you can always choose to do the right thing. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
And that's the Christian Catholic life. It's like you're not really made to fit in, you're made to stand out. So you do have to go over that spine, like you were saying, because that is the Catholic way. I mean, that's the Christian way. That's being a disciple of Jesus. So definitely,
Right.
you know,
And it might not work, right? It might not work. But when you stand before the Lord, he'll know your heart, and he'll know that you did everything you possibly could to do the right thing.
absolutely.
And that's ultimately what matters, is our judgment day and how we affected others.
Right. Absolutely, 100%. So I guess we're almost to the end. Is there just anything else? Because, like I said, I mean, a lot of people, especially I feel like the older people who are for pro-life, maybe. No, I mean, I know of a couple older people who are really involved in pro-life because they know people who are in the pro-life movement. But again, I just feel like the general audience just doesn't really. I mean, no one likes to turn on the news anyway. Let's get real. But no one really keeps up to date with the pro-life movement, so to say. I just want to get your take on anything else, last remarks, and then also on the all the Planned Parenthoods clinics shutting down because I mean they're being funded now. They're not getting funded now. They can't stay open. So I just want to get your thought on that and any last remarks that you have.
Yeah. So I think you're right. You know, like people don't even like to turn on the news. I really don't like to turn on the news. I get my news from Instagram, right? Um, I think what we can do is to show up in the spaces where people are getting their news from. I'm not saying everybody's called to, you know, start an Instagram account or start a podcast, but if you feel that on your heart, you should do it. You never know who's going to see it. It might not get millions of views. It might not get 100 views. It might just get 50. You never know what seed you're going to plant in somebody's mind, in somebody's heart. I think it's important for us to show up in these spaces. You know, and if it's not social media, maybe it's the workplace. Maybe it's, you know, talking to one of your coworkers about the movement. Maybe it's talking to people in your parish or your church community. maybe it's talking to the young people in your book club that you might be a part of, right? Like, I think it's just so important for us to try to show up wherever you are, wherever you're at. But I think there's a lot of power in using social media the right way, to spread the gospel, to spread the message of the pro-life movement, which is really the gospel anyway.
Mhm.
But I think there's a lot of power in using the internet for good. It's certainly how my life got changed. It was through the internet. And there's a lot of bad stuff on the internet, but there's a lot of good stuff on the internet. So I think there's a lot of power, like I said, in just telling the truth on Instagram or on TikTok, while we can. And to answer your question about the Planned Parenthood's shutting down, I think it's wonderful. I think it's great. Praise God. I'm very disappointed that it was originally going to be defunded for 10 years, and then that secretary person or whatever, amended it even after it had passed and been approved, which I don't even understand how that's legal. Shortened it to only 1 year. Of course, 1 year is not enough. Of course, 10 years isn't enough. But at least 10 years would have bought us a little more time to keep defunding these things, these awful, awful places. But, we have to stay vigilant. We have to stay in the fight. 1 year, of course, is not enough. The ultimate goal is to defund them forever, for them to not even exist. So make your voices heard at the voting booth. I think it's so important for us as Christians to reduce as much evil as we can in the world. And we're never going to have a perfect candidate, but please, vote for the lesser of two evils so we can preserve as much life as possible. And like I said, just because something is legal doesn't mean you have to go through with it. Doesn't mean you can't still change somebody's mind. Doesn't mean you can't still save lives. But don't sit out elections. Don't sit at home and say, oh, my vote doesn't matter. That's how we get people like the Virginia governor or like the New York City mayor. Well, I maybe shouldn't use New York City as an example because that's super liberal. So they're kind of outnumbered there. But don't sit at home and do nothing. Try. You have to try.
Right.
That's what I would say. Never stop fighting for what matters.
Right. And I mean that happens with the kind of the last election. It's like people are saying, I don't know which one to vote for because it's kind of two evils. And like, yeah, go for the less of two evils and really go off what your faith teaches. That's for sure. That's
Yeah.
what it all boils down to. Because like you said, it's about Judgment Day, what God has, what you did instead of what you needed to. So yeah. Well, awesome. Can you again, real quickly, just talk about your channel or just where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So you can find my podcast on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. If you go to my show, there's like a little link that'll tell you, which platforms you can listen on, but it's pretty much available like all the major podcast platforms, minus a couple here and there. But yeah, it's pretty much available like on the major platforms. Um, and you can find the Instagram for my podcast at Alexandra's period Alley. And then my personal Instagram is Alexandra period the period Queen. Those are my only two Instagrams. I'm also on Truth Social. Don't post a ton on there, but yeah, those are my only channels, just my podcast, my Instagram, and Truth Social. So you can find me on Truth Social pretty easily. It's just my name. So
Okay.
but yeah, that's where I'm at. Always trying to um, be artistic or be creative, but like from a Catholic pro-life conservative perspective. So yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you for your ministry, like I said, and thank you for the time of day. Because, like I said, I know it's been a little bit since we had talked about pro-life on the show, and maybe some of it for the audience has been a little refresher. But there's been a lot of stuff happening, so I did want to get someone on to talk about it. So, thank you for your time today, and we'll have the links down in the show notes for the audience to see as well. So,
Yeah, thank you.
all right, Miss Alexandra, everyone, Alexandra Ali's, check her out on our podcast. And links down in the show notes down below. And really go out there and be a true witness. Like you said, it's fight for what's right. I mean, it's basically, again, it boils down to your faith instead of what the outside world. It's not this secular war we're after. It's about the eternal reward in heaven. So again, fight for what's right, even though if it's hard and it's not the great thing to do, or the easy thing to do, I should say, and a lot of people kind of get back at you for that. Just know that God sees that. So
That's right.
without further ado, God love you and your family. Stay grace, go to the sacraments, and God willing, we'll see you next time on Catholic Table Talk.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Catholic Table Talk podcast, where everything Catholic is on the table. Don't forget to subscribe to Catholic Table Talk on your favorite podcast platform to get new episodes delivered directly to you every Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern.